Okay. Good morning.
It's starting.
Oh,
Okay. Sorry.
oh, we have to agree. I agreed. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm Dan Sissick. I'm hosting this week. Samantha Studebaker Carl has some things going on. She's here, but she's got other things she's got to take out. And I got my wonderful, awesome friend Catherine here, too. She's always here whenever she can be. So we're going to try and finish up the last chapter of the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I tried to do last week, but because of technical issues, it didn't get out there. So here we go again, round two. The downside of creating good habits. So basically, I'm just going to read it a little bit to give you a little backdrop. It says habits create the foundation for mastery. In chess, it is only after the basic movements of the pieces have become automatic that a player can focus on the next level of the game. Each chunk of information that is memorized opens up the mental space for more effortful thinking. This is true for any endeavor. When you know the excuse me, when you know the simple movements so well that you can perform them without thinking, you're free to pay attention to more advanced details in this way. Habits are the backbone of any pursuit of excellence. So, um, what I talked about a little bit last week was, and we have another new little participant, and I think that's her grandson Owen in her place. So I think he's going to just watch us and learn a little bit, maybe. Um, but with that, I was talking about tennis. I was a tennis player for 6 years in junior high and high school, and I basically taught myself how to play back after I saw my first tennis match on TV. And Catherine probably might remember this. I don't know if Samantha will, but I'm pretty sure Catherine will. Um, the Bobby Riggs, Billie Jean King big tennis tournament they had, the battle of what they call the battle of the sexes, and Billie Jean King won that for some odd reason somehow sparked my interest in it. It's like, oh, it's a sport that anybody can play. You don't have to be big. You can be big, but it can be anybody. And I was kind of small, but yet I could take one of my grandmother's old tennis rackets, which I kind of eventually kept for a lot of years. I love that wooden racket back when they still had wooden rackets. And taught myself. I went down to the park. We had a park, and it had an area that people would do handball. But you could also, and it had a line drawn above it. And you tried to hit it above that line. And I would just go down and practice hitting it on my own, and I got okay with it. Then when I got into junior high, I decided to join the tennis team there because I already had a desire and interest, and I grew to love the sport. It's my favorite sport. So in that, the coach had to teach us certain basics and things because a lot of us were first time just learning, coming out, trying it out, and he had to get us into the basics and teach us ground strokes and how to practice hitting ground strokes or have a ball machine on the other side and it would pop over and we'd have to take our swings. And in the beginning we missed a lot because our eye hand coordination for being able to keep our eye on the ball and get the swing the racket was horrible. But in time we got better and better. And so that's like the chess pieces, the beginning pieces of getting that rote memory and getting learning and getting in tune with your body, and that muscle memory comes in. So then as I got better, then the coach would start having us learning where to place it. We had to first learn to just hit it. Then we had to learn how to place it where we wanted to place it. So then he'd say, okay, when you swing, aim for over in that far corner or aim for that far corner or aim for here. And so we had to practice those things and we had to learn how to have the strength and the finesse of hard to hit it and how soft to hit it sometimes and things like that. So I think that's kind of how I looked at it. As we got more advanced, the main things were always there. I can walk out to a park and I know I can start hitting the ball and I'm going to be able to hit it pretty good. I still might have to warm up a little bit and get back to where my muscle memory comes back. And then I can start getting better, place it over there or over here, things like that. But I can just pick it up and go. It's not like I have to relearn it all again. Same thing like with riding a bike or as you get older, driving a car, sometimes we drive our cars on that automatic pilot. We get in it, and the next we know, we're there, and we go like, "How did I get here?" I don't, you don't really remember doing it, but you did it. So that's the benefits. But that comes at that cost of that early initial doing it. And then he says, and that comes down to being the mindless repetition that's automatic. You become less sensitive to feedback. So in those early time periods, um, I'm sure, I think you used to ride horses, right, Catherine? So I'm sure back in the beginning,
Yep.
you may have fallen off a horse or a few times, but now you could probably, if your body were in a condition to be able to, I'm sure you could get right back up there, and you would be able to get right back in the saddle and be like, oh, and it would be like very comfortable and very, something that would be pleasing and stuff, or you'd be like, ah, this feels good. But you forget about the feedback sometimes, because now I don't stress so much about, where I just get in and start hitting, and then I try to pick up a match or two with somebody, and so I can get into that part of it. The challenge of, okay, they're hitting here, I'm hitting there, they're, trying to win that point. So, and he says the upside of habits is that we can do things without thinking. The downside of habits is that you get used to doing things in a certain way and stop paying attention to little errors. You assume you're getting better because you're gaining experience. In reality, you are merely reinforcing your current habits, not improving them. In fact, some research has shown that once a skill has been mastered, there is usually a slight decline in performance over time. Going back to my tennis analogy, that is very true, because you're so just, focused on, trying to get to that next point or winning that point, that you forget, sometimes you forget the mechanics of the mastery of, so when you are swinging to hit the ball and put it over where you want to put it, yes, you're paying attention to it, but sometimes you might be a little off and it doesn't go exactly where you want it. But that's because you're already, usually when I'm playing tennis, I'm at least two shots ahead, maybe three, if I can see where the point's going far enough. So that little bit of in between, I'm not quite as, my mechanics aren't quite right spot on. And I think that's the same thing with riding a horse. As you get more into it and you're enjoying the thrill of it, being out in the country, riding the horse and just enjoying it, you're doing the things you need to do, but you're losing some of the mechanics of the things that make you a little more aware of what's going on. And sometimes you might not see that stick, or you might not see that, or not pay attention that there's a little dip in the uh, ahead, or sometimes that snake off to the side or something like that that could maybe scare the horse or something. So I think that's something you have to be mindful of and have to think about. But it's usually minor, and it's not a big thing. Then he goes, however, you want to maximize your potential and achieve elite levels of performance. You need a more nuanced approach. You can't repeat the same things blindly and expect to become exceptional. Habits are necessary but not sufficient for mastery. What you need is a combination of automatic habits and deliberate practice. And to become great, uh, certain skills do need to become automatic. Basketball players need to be able to dribble without thinking before they can move on to mastering layups with their non-dominant hand. Surgeons need to repeat that first incision so many times that they could do it with their eyes closed, so they can focus on the hundreds of variables that arise during surgery. But after one habit has been mastered, you have to return to effortful part of the work and begin building the next habit. And so, with that, I don't know, maybe um, Karen, maybe Catherine has some insights into, what she thinks about effortful. Um, what was it again? Effortful habits, or the effortful part of the work. It, like when you were riding a horse, what was the effort that you really had to put into it when you were really first learning and stuff, compared to, say, like now, if you were able to able to ride again, what would the effort be? What would the difference be?
Yeah, I think anytime you start a new skill, you're much more attentive to what's going on. And then, like you said with driving, you get to the point where you just have mastered the skill so well that you're just kind of on autopilot. Now, I don't do that when I'm driving, like for Lyft with passengers in my car. I'm very, very attentive, of course, but I'm talking about when you're just driving yourself back from the grocery store or something, like a route that you're super familiar with, and you say you could drive it with your eyes closed pretty much. Horseback riding always came pretty naturally to me, and I never competed in that sport. So I never really was, I mean, I was focused on staying in the saddle, but I wasn't focused on form necessarily. Now, when I was younger, I did competition roller skating, dance skating, and I had to do these jumps and spins and all these different things. And so it was just rote learning. Like you just did it over and over and over and over and over. And you did have to uh, make little adjustments so that your performance was perfect or you weren't going to win the competition or whatever. And I think he's right. There's definitely a downside. You do once you get used to doing just to pick something out, say a figure eight, and you've got the your weight on the right edge of your wheel and this, once you learn how to do that, then it becomes a basic skill that you could just do. But do you do it as well as when in the beginning when you were first paying attention? Probably not. It's kind of like the honeymoon's over. You're paying a lot of attention the first year, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay. So I think it definitely takes effort to excel at anything, and how these major athletes do it. We're having a football game in town today, and I know that the guys have been out there practicing, and of course, some of it just comes down to luck because maybe you get an injury or something, and it takes you out. But I think that they work really, really hard to be as good as they are, and the thing about it is when you get really good at something, you make it look so easy, and I think that's especially true with music. You get these musicians and they're playing these amazing songs, and it looks quote easy, and then you decide, oh well, I have a cello that I can't play, and it's like, oh, I want to play the cello, and look how easy it is. And then you get in there and you try, and it's not quite as easy as but it's just a matter of practice and making yourself, repeat the skills over and over. I think he said earlier in the book that the person who excels is not necessarily the person that has the natural gift at it, but is the person who's willing to put up with the monotony of just doing it over and over.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's I played the violin and I love the violin and I would love to get back into it, and I have one here in I actually have one again. Have I picked it up? Have I gone and got new strings? So because other strings went bad on me for the bow, and get back in and start. I know what it takes to learn to play the violin good because I was good. I was a featured performer at a couple things. Me and my sister, she wasn't as good as me, but she was good, and we got to be able to, for opening day ceremonies of the World 1974 World Fair Expo in Spokane, in my hometown, be there for the opening day ceremonies with a whole bunch of other kids from other schools that were the top students and perform, and we all had to perform the same song. So we all had to learn the same song. We also had to be able to get there, and we didn't perform practice together a lot. We went home and practiced it, and then when we got there, we might have one or two times before the opportunity to kind of practice through it. So it was interesting. It came off very well, but what it takes to play the violin and hit those and find those notes just right on the strings and work that bow just so you hit it just right so you get the right notes out of it, that's hard work. And I think you said you did used to play the cello, right, Catherine? And so you understand what I'm talking about, right? You know, the nuances of if you don't put your finger in that right spot, you know, the note is horrible. I can speak that from personal experience, you know, especially after seeing some of the looks on my, teacher's face and that kind of look, type thing, you're almost there, move that finger just a little bit more this way. Now try. Oh, see the difference? That type of aspect. But so I'm going to go into the next part of the book, and it says how to review your habits and make adjustments. I'm going to really make this as quick of a synopsis of this, but it talks about the 1986 the Los Angeles Lakers had one of the most talented basketball teams ever assembled, but they are rarely remembered that way. The team started the 1985-1986 NBA season with an astounding 25 and 29 and 5 record, and the pundits were saying that we might be the best team in the history of basketball. Head coach Pat Riley said after the season. Surprisingly, the Lakers stumbled in the playoffs and suffered a season-ending defeat to the Western Conference in the Western Conference Final. The best team in the history of basketball didn't even play for the NBA championship. So that really made Pat Riley think. He said he didn't want that to ever happen again, and he wanted to find a way of how to help his um, team always be able to perform and be at their peak performance. And so he didn't want those, ooh, excuse me, flashes of brilliance, and then followed by that gradual fade in performance. He wanted the Lakers to play up to their potential night after night. So in the summer of 1986, he created a plan to do exactly a system he called the Career Best Efforts Program. So what they did is when their players would first join, they would take all their stats and history for the player back to way back to his high school days or when they first started. They had it from when they first started, and he says that he calls it taking their number. We look for an accurate gauge. Excuse me. It's only 8 o'clock here, so sorry, I'm still trying to wake up. Um, but we look for an accurate gauge of what a player can do, then build him into our plan of the team, and based on the notion that he will maintain and then improve upon his averages. So after they determine, their baseline performance, he would then go and ask each player to improve their input by at least 1% over the course of the season. If they succeeded, it would be a career best effort, similar to the British cycling team that was discussed in Chapter 1. The Lakers sought peak performance by getting slightly better each day. And I liken this to how I think a little bit in the book, The Slight Edge, and it may not because of, but I think it's a good similar analogy. In the book, The Slight Edge, he talks about I think it's called the hyacinth, or it's a water-based plant that will be it's like a lily or something like that, and it will be like one or two in the pond, but in the right settings, that hyacinth will multiply itself and can end up covering that whole pond, and it can do it in most cases, depending on the size of the pond, in about 30 days. So it just replicates the same and builds upon and comes up and does, and it is able to, cover that hole. So it's putting out its best effort, and because it doesn't have any more room to grow or cover, it then stops because in its natural surroundings, it wouldn't be able to continue on. But that idea kind of just, that improving, 1%, you get to your peak best and you can cover all facets. And that's also where you get the review and reflection of, looking and saying, okay, what did I do good? What were my stats? Where are my stats? And they have the stats so they know exactly what type of output they put that day. and they can tell if they went up that day or that game or down that game. And then they can say, okay, well, you need to work on this or practice that or focus on that. And the one thing, like when I've watched a lot of basketball games, especially in college, and I think especially in the professional, the one thing that they all seem to lack a lot of practice in is, but yet it can be the biggest difference in winning a game are free throws. And they're all focused on being that flashy slam dunker, that flashy 3-pointer, or the layups and all that. But sometimes it comes down to winning a game is, can you make that 2 point, that those 2 points on the free throw, if you get the foul and you get the 1-1 or the two, you know and you say like it's tied 90-90, and you get those two buckets and you only have a couple seconds left, you're probably going to win. Or it's going to take a very special type of shot and some luck for them to tie it or get a 3-pointer. So to me, sometimes, and I think that's what Pat Riley was getting to. You need to look and focus on and review what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, work on that, but have that continual commitment to that 1%, increase and output. And I think that's something that can be said for just in everyday life. If you have certain things and certain goals and certain things that you want to do, you have to review and reflect. And so he goes into, how they scored it and how they showed and how they, can get to a certain number. And if you want to find that, you can get that in the book. Once again, I would suggest that it's a great read, and, definitely read it. And, but it's there, but I'm not going to go into deep. But I do want to get into the part where he talks about reflection, and uh, here it is. Okay, down here. Improvement is not just about learning habits; it's also about fine tuning them. Reflection and review ensures that you spend your time on the right things and make course corrections whenever necessary. Like Pat Riley adjusting the effort of his players on a nightly basis, you don't want to keep practicing a habit if it becomes ineffective. Personally, this is the uh, author. Personally, he employs two primary modes of reflection and review. Each December, he performs an annual review in which he reflects on the previous year. He says, I tally my habits for the year by counting up how many articles I published, how many workouts I put in, how many new places I visited, and more. And then I reflect on my progress or lack thereof by answering three questions: what went well this year, what didn't go so well this year, and what did I learn this year? And I think those are great, three great practical things that you can employ in your life in general, just in, where with the goals and what you wanting to do, where you want to be. It's kind of like when people make New Year's uh, resolutions. I can't talk this morning. That. Um, you look back kind of and say, "Oh, I result to this," but why do so many people not follow through on their resolution? I think because they're made haphazardly in a way instead of really truly reflecting on what went well, what didn't go so well, and what did I learn, and going from there. But also, you have to take stock of what your skills and your habits and where you're at and what you do. When I was a tennis player and actively playing and played for 6 years, we kind of did that each year. Our coach would come back, and some of us might have played some over the summer or off season, or kept up practicing a little more than others. So then, therefore, we come back and we'd be a little higher level than maybe some of the others. Now, some of the others who might have had a little bit more natural ability, or it was a little easier for them, maybe they could jump back right in and be there. But I think in order to be effective, some of the things I've learned in being involved in the network marketing and being an entrepreneurial mindset and stuff is you kind of have to always go back and reflect and look and see what was working, what wasn't, where you can make improvements, and what needs to be fixed, and where do I want to go. And I think that's, these three questions are also awesome. But he also does a second one, and so it seems like about every 6 months he's doing reflecting, and it's, end of year, middle of year, and so that way he kind of, is in a constant state of looking and reflecting, but it's with a different point of view each time. And so he says 6 months later, when summer rolls around, I conduct an integrity report. Like everyone, I make a lot of mistakes. My integrity report helps me realize where I went wrong and motivates me to get back on course. I use it as a time to revisit my core values and consider whether I've been living in accordance with them. This is when I reflect on my identity and how I can work toward being the type of person I wish to become. And he says my yearly integrity report answers these three questions: what are the core values that drive my life and work? How am I living and working with integrity right now? And how can I set a higher standard in the future? So similar to the first three that he does at the end of the year, but with a little twist, and gives them a good idea of where how centered it is, or kind of you know gets you back to, okay, what was the original thing that brought me into this, or brought me to do that, or get there, and to move forward to where I want to get. And I think that's a great way of reviewing. Very simple. You don't really need a lot of questions, but if you have the right questions and get into there, I think it helps a lot. Um, in things you've done in the past, Catherine, or even Samantha, if she's listening enough, have you guys ever done like those type of things? I kind of have, and I kind of haven't. And it's been hit and miss for me. So I probably have not followed through the way I wanted to. But have you ever done stuff like that? And has it helped you? Has it been beneficial? Or do you think it's something that can really benefit people and help them out?
Well, I think when I was a nurse, there was always somebody in the company who was looking at performance and how to make things better and more efficient, more cost effective. I think you see that a lot in business. And maybe Samantha, since you guys have your own trucking business, maybe you utilize some of these techniques for that. Um, I do it unofficially as a Lyft driver. I mean, I'm always looking at my ratings. I have very high ratings and I like to keep my ratings high. So I'm always trying to, I'm a total hermit. You guys know me, and I could just not say a word to anybody every day. And I really have to push myself to be more outgoing, be more friendly, be sensitive to the need of the rider as far as, are they in a talkative mood? They're not in a talkative mood. Can I see that they're upset today? This, that, and the other. Um, but I haven't really done it on a personal level. And I really like that idea. Not, you guys know I'm not, into all these plans and really complicated stuff, but just those three questions I think are great, and just so that you don't wind up living the same life year after year after year after, they say that's not a life when you just do the same thing for 80 years. That's not really a life. So I think that those are great questions, a great way to help improve things, because there's certainly things in my life that I need to improve. Since I've been driving, I've put on quite a bit of weight because I'm just sitting 12 hours a day and I'm too exhausted to exercise. And I was thinking that I don't often have like most of the time I get the next ride before I drop off the person I have, but once in a while, there'll be just, maybe a few minutes between rides. And if nothing else, maybe I could get out and do jumping jacks or something like that, something that doesn't take any equipment. It's very simple, but it's an effective exercise and works all your muscles and cardio too. So I think jumping jacks is probably the easiest one to do. But I think I think, taking those techniques that are typically used in businesses to improve and applying them to your life, just your personal life, is a great idea. As long as you keep it simple and don't get too, don't just make it so that it's another stress on yourself, I guess.
And I think that's why I love the simplicity of, the 2 times a year, he does the one, annual review and then the integrity report, and he looks at it from 2 different sides. They're still kind of similar because I love how similar the questions and they work together. That's the other thing I like. The, annual review works well into the questions of the integrity, you know, and they mesh together, but it's a great way. And to do it the 2 times a year, like I says, it doesn't take a lot of time, maybe a few hours, or a day or 2 here going through, a month and through between everything else you're doing. But if you find a little structure for it and do it about the same time every year, you get that becomes part of your habits, but also becomes a way of how to gauge and see where you're at and what's going on. And and the part the one that really got me was the integrity report. What are the core values that drive my life and work? Am I living and working with integrity right now? How can I set a higher standard in the future? That speaks volumes to me because um, I don't think if you and I think you'll agree, if you're not going from a sense of authenticity of who you are and what you're doing, then when you're doing everything else, it doesn't come out and it doesn't come out in the richness and with the fullness of what it can be as to who you are and fully engaging into those habits and what you're doing and everything like that. It will always feel a little like you'll always feel uncomfortable and you'll just feel edgy or like something's not right. But if you kind of do that review and say, okay, is this me, is this coming out of me and what I am and what I'm about, and then again, like I said, setting the standards a little higher, so you're always maintaining that high standard for yourself, not even from but other people will then kind of pull up to your level because you set that for yourself. And you can kind of, once again, and why we're all been become a part of this. We all have tend to have the same mindset and want something better for our lives and want to be more self-sufficient and not have to rely on a job or this or that or the other thing. Um, and we can be more in control of our own lives. So I think that's the other part of it. Whereas you know going and setting that integrity. So now I'm going to try and finish up. Um, it says how to break the beliefs that hold you back. In the beginning, repeating a habit is essential to build up evidence of your desired identity. As you latch on to that new identity, however, those same beliefs can hold you back from the next level of growth. When working against you, your identity creates a kind of pride that encourages you to deny your weak spots and prevents you from truly growing. This is one of the greatest downsides of building habits. The more sacred an idea is to us, that is, the more deeply it is tied to our identity, the more strongly we will defend against criticism. You see this in every industry. The teacher who ignores innovative teaching methods and sticks with the tried and true lesson plan. The veteran manager who is committed to doing things his way. The surgeon who dismisses the idea of her younger colleagues. The band who produces a mind-blowing first album and then gets stuck in a rut. And the tighter we cling to an identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond. One solution is to avoid making any single aspect of your identity an overwhelming portion of who you are. In the words of the investor Paul Graham, keep your identity small. The more you let a single belief define you, the less capable you are of adapting when life challenges you. If you tie everything up in being the point guard or the partner at the firm or whatever else, then the loss of that facet of your life will wreck you. If you're vegan and then develop a health condition that forces you to change your diet, you'll have an identity crisis on your hands. Then, when you cling too tightly to one identity, you become brittle. Lose the one thing and you lose yourself. And I think that's something that we hear a lot that is being said out there just by people, that so many people get wrapped up in their jobs. I admit that's kind of happened to me a little bit, being an accountant, and I have to kind of accounting is one aspect of who I am, but there's so many other facets to me. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to build but because certain things I'm identify with, it has, I think, probably held me back a little bit more than grasping on some of the other areas I want to get to, that where I see myself in my head of, I want to be this, I want to have that freedom, I want to have that. But my identity, because it took me so long to get my degree, it's so embedded in me. And that part, I think maybe as being a nurse, that probably was a big identity thing for you for a lot of years, Catherine. And you, Samantha, you guys doing your business and then moving into other things, now coming back to your business. I'm sure that has become a big identity, and I think, and we hear it all the time. The thing that I hear a lot. I'm not trying to put this as a downside, but I hear where they do studies all the time and talk about women, and women who lose themselves because their identity becomes so much their family, their kids, their husbands, their that, and they lose themselves in amongst that, and they forget who they are. And I hear that is pretty common, with lots of women, and I think that's something that, and as men, we definitely get tied into our jobs and our, well, I'm the breadwinner. I got to take care of my family. I'm this. I got to do that. And in reality, it's the teamwork between the two, working together and meshing together, and but still being themselves to build and go forth. And I think in ourselves also, we have to learn and review and look at ourselves and say that's one component of me. But it's hard to draw that out of ourselves, and sometimes we need the other people in our lives to help us see those things. And I think that's why those other questions that we just talked about, the annual review and the integrity report, can be ways of how of bringing that out and to help us look at ourselves, but also maybe incorporate one or two good close friends into those questions and have them rate us and maybe say, okay, you see yourself here, but this is where I see you, and this is how you come across to me, and maybe employ that. Maybe that might be another way of adding an added level to our review, and sticking to our identities and finding our identities, not in everything out there, but back to who we really are. And I think that's something that maybe we all could work at, and uh, might help us all get to a level that we're all attaining. But I want to go over one last thing, and it says the key to mitigating these losses of identity is to redefine yourself such that you get to keep important aspects of your identity, even if your particular role changes. I'm an athlete becomes I'm the type of person who is mentally tough and loves the physical challenge. I'm a great soldier transforms into I'm the type of person who is disciplined, reliable, and great on a team. I'm the CEO translate to I'm the type of person who builds and creates things. And then he says, when chosen effectively, an identity can be flexible rather than brittle, like water flowing around an obstacle. And we talked about water and how it always somehow finds a way around whatever is in front of it. Um, like water flowing around an obstacle, your identity works with the changing circumstances rather than against them. And this is a part of the whole book that really got me. I loved it because it gave me a whole new look at, um, this, because we've studied this. We actually studied this in the Tao Te Ching when we did, change your thoughts, change your life, living the wisdom of the Tao. So the following quote is from the Tao Te Ching, and it encapsulates the ideas perfectly. Men are born soft and supple, yet they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant, yet they are brittle and dry. Thus, whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and stiff will be broken, the supple will prevail. Lu Tao. And it got me to thinking a little bit, and the picture that came to my mind is like, and it may be a little exaggerated, but like in hurricanes or in tornadoes, where everything gets obliterated because it's a little more solid, a little more rigid, and things like that. But you see that one or two or three trees that are still left standing, and somehow because their roots are strong enough, but yet they were able to be pliable and flexible enough and give with the wind, they're still standing. And I think that's kind of, what he's alluding to. And when we went over this, I don't think I got that full picture of that, but here, and it just brought it to a whole new different light. And it kind of, that's what really stuck out to me. And it makes sense is those of us who are just so rigid in our ways and set in our ways and not willing to bend or, usually they get pushed to the wayside because they find in business they find newer people that have more of the vision of where the company's going and can help change what hasn't been working to finding the new ways to build a brand or grow the customer base or something like that. So I think that was just a really telltale thing of this chapter. And then to summarize, he says habits deliver us numerous benefits, but the downside is that they can lock us into our previous patterns of thinking and acting, even when the world is shifting around us. Everything is impermanent. Life is constantly changing, so you need to periodically check in to see if your old habits and beliefs are still serving you. A lack of self awareness is poison. Reflection and review is the antidote. And then just a summary says the upside of habits is that we can do things without thinking. The downside is we can stop paying attention to little errors. Habits and deliberate practice equal mastery. Reflection and review is a process that allows you to remain conscious of your performance over time. And the tighter we cling to an identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it. So that's the end. There's a conclusion. I didn't read it, and I don't want to take time to because we're already at almost 8:30. So I'm sure people have things to do and get on with their lives. I know you're probably anxious to get back out and get driving to help earn some money, just like I'm going to be going out and Ubering for a while myself. So, um, any last thoughts from you guys or what you think?
I want to hear from Samantha. If she
Same
can
here.
talk. I know she's grandmothering this morning, but
She's a
what are your
grandma
thoughts on
mode.
this book? And yeah.
Okay, Grandma Sam.
Uh, we'll see if we can. I can wrap this up real quick because I got a stinky diaper I gotta take care of. Yeah, it's this has been an interesting book. When we first started on this, I really started trying to ramp up an exercise routine. And I got some really great insights from it on changing my habits or creating a new habit. And I really liked what it had to say about habit stacking and about how cues to habits is like, one, it's like a cue happens in your life and that makes you think, oh, I have to do this thing. And so I had created kind of my little habit stack of, I would make my coffee and then I would do my qigong. And then when I was done with that, I would do my bicycle and then I'd be ready for the day, because previously I'd be like snooze on my alarm. And it was like this snooze and that snooze. And then the third snooze was when it's time to get up. That was my cue for getting up. Right. And now my alarm goes off and that's my cue to get up and start my routine. And so that's worked out fairly well for me up until just recently when my life kind of went to chaos and I've got sick. And I don't know if you can tell from my voice, I've been unsuccessfully fighting a cold for like 3 weeks now. And so that's been a little bit of a kicker in my routine. But I still am very fully intentional on getting back into my routine. So and just knowing those just different little things that you can trigger a habit by creating a cue and then having the habit stack be kind of the plan that you follow, and that's been great. And just becoming aware of it too has helped me identify where I've had habits um, that like for instance, on the weekend I sometimes was forgetting to like brush my teeth in the morning because I had created this like habitual routine of things that I was doing on my weekdays that I wasn't doing during the weekend, and I would forget to brush my teeth until like later in the day and I'd be like, oh my god, I didn't brush my teeth. But it was because I wasn't doing it in that like habit stack of cues that each thing would cue the next thing. And so I figured out I just need to create a morning or a weekend habit stack, if you will, to make sure that I was doing that consistently at the right time, because it would be horrible. I'd go to the grocery store and realize I hadn't brushed my teeth, and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I brush my teeth this morning, And so it's just like little silly stuff like that. And then when you were just talking a minute ago, Dan, about the identifying with like your identity is your well, what was the words you were using? But anyway, you get kind of stuck in your identity and then you have trouble changing it. And it kind of reminded me of you hear about like older people who retire and then like within a very few years they're passing away because they've just kind of like they don't know what to do with themselves and then they just kind of deteriorate really quickly and that I'm like, gosh, what if it's just because they had this identity in their career and then they're not doing their career anymore and they didn't find a new identity path to follow to keep them active in their lives and that that might have kept them alive until they were like 100. Who knows? I don't know. And then yeah, and agreeing with you on the whole thing when you're a stay-at-home mom and you do that for basically 20 years, and then all of a sudden you don't have your kids at home anymore and they're out in the world, and you're like, oh, what do I do with myself? I could totally see that. Of course, with me, my kids moved out, and I'm like, freedom! I'm so excited about it. And but I still there for a while. I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? Because I find some mornings on the weekend or on days where we get rained out, and I'm like sitting here going, what am I supposed to do? I don't have like a thing to do. I'll do my little exercise routine in the morning, and then I'll be sitting there going, okay, I paid my bills. My kitchen's clean. What do I do? And so I haven't really like found a recreational identity, I guess. And then I don't know, then there was another like a few years ago, you guys knew when I was living at the campground and I was really wrapped up in what I was doing online. And then my husband wanted to flip our world upside down and move us back to Indiana and do this trucking company and all of that. And I guess I guess it could have been kind of an identity crisis, if you will, because I was like, this is what I was really focused on, is living this kind of natural in nature lifestyle and focus more on my online stuff and our mastermind and all of that. And then all of a sudden he wants to just flip us upside down and change everything and move us back to cold Indiana. And, and I really struggled with that for a little while. And even when we were here for the beginning, I struggled with whether or not I was really committed to it. And I had to just kind of re-identify where I was going with that, and now I'm back on board, and we're all good, and I've figured it out. But there for a while, it was a struggle, and it could be, it's probably because a lot of those habits that I had then were very focused on meditation and being in nature and taking walks, and it was just like, oh, I was just really enjoying that, and then to not have that anymore has been hard. So I had to create a whole new way of being. So I know we're like way past our normal time, and we probably all need to get back to what we're doing. Let me see.
Did you find the name of that book?
Yes,
It's
I found the
in the
name of the
chat.
book. Yeah, it's called Leonardo and Gabriel, and it's by Tim Tigner. And I think when I post this recording up on YouTube, I'll put the link on Amazon so that the folks can get to that. I think we're going to talk about that book next. And but we're going to give ourselves a little bit more of a break this time. We're going to take November off from studying our book, and we'll probably just be getting on here to have some chats and get used to our new platform and all of that kind of thing. But we'll probably be live here and there throughout the month of October, um, and recorded and whatnot, and then we'll get started on that book at the beginning of November. I'm thinking probably November 9th. So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4 weekends where we're off of studying, but we'll still get together and chat. And then so starting the book on November 9th, so everybody has plenty of time to get it. and we can prepare for that. So
And get
I'll let
everybody a little
you.
more used to the
Yeah.
platform too. Because I signed on, but I signed on under my sign-on that I have for here to come in here, and I had no problems. So for me, it was just remembering and going through the steps of doing it when I had to sign on under you. And I think, that's where I got some of my steps. But I think as I get better at it and do it 2 or 3 times in a row, and maybe I should write the steps down. Maybe on this, I'll write the steps down and have them in a spot where I can have them right there and just follow them instead of in my mind like, okay, I did this, I do that, I do that. And that way and I can help myself be a little more proactive for if I have to jump on and do it too. So we all didn't, we all jumped, but we all weren't so ready for the jump. We were so tied to Zoom, and we all had that identity with Zoom. We all just knew it and did it for so long that I think we all had our own minor identity crisis with this, even though it's not a bad platform. I think if we get work through it. And getting Karen back here and Sandy and anybody else who wants to come back. So are we done?
I think we're
I
done.
guess we're
Do
done.
you have anything
Okay.
final you want to add, Catherine? All good? All right.
No, I think the analogy of the trees at the end and being flexible, I think from the conversations that I hear from my back seat, pretty much everyone who's in what I would consider crisis is because of inflexibility. And so I think that the ability to have an open mind and because some people are just, and I come from the South, and I can say this is especially true for people from the South, like they're raised a certain way, they're raised to have certain beliefs, they're raised in a this is the way it is. It's like very black and white sort of thing. And when anything bucks against that, it causes so much stress and uncomfortableness. So I think the ability to have your own mind, an open mind, and not just live your life based on what you've been taught, this is how things are, this is how things are supposed to be. I think that's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, because in my most stressed moments in my life, it hasn't been, a hero that flies down out of the sky and saves me. It's been my ability to change my thinking process about that situation that has saved my life every time and reduced that stress. So I think that flexibility, the ability to open your mind to new concepts. And that's what this next book is about, by the way, is just maybe looking at things in a little different way. It was suggested by our dear friend Karen, who used to be with us every week. And then she kind of took a little vacation from us for a while to focus on some personal things. And now she's coming back to us. And we're so excited. She's not here today, but we're so excited to have her back. And she recommended this book. So I actually already have it on Kindle. I haven't started reading it yet, but it is available on Kindle for those of you who use that. So
I
thank
have
you
Kindle.
guys. Yeah,
So we need to tell her that we're doing her book, so she has to be here.
that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I'll definitely do that. I'll message her directly, but I'm going to put it in our chat, and then we'll create a post on our Facebook group too. So yes. What? Did your movie stop? Okay, give me just a moment. Okay, guys, it's been awesome. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I look forward to studying that book next month. And all right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. The stop button.